On a clear night, Earth can look like a finished world, blue oceans, white clouds, and a thin atmosphere glowing at the edge of darkness. But from orbit, the planet is not still. Wetlands expand and contract, forests breathe, ice retreats, and invisible gases move through the air. The next generation of Earth-observing satellites is being built to watch those changes in remarkable detail. In September 2026, Europe is preparing to launch two important spacecraft together on a Vega-C rocket, FLEX, the Fluorescence Explorer, and Copernicus Sentinel-3C. The launch itself will last only minutes. The science mission begins after that, when these instruments start turning sunlight into information about the living planet. FLEX has a particularly unusual job. Most satellites see the color of vegetation, but FLEX is designed to detect a faint glow emitted by plants themselves. This glow is called solar-induced fluorescence, and it is produced during photosynthesis. It is not a bright light that we can see with our eyes. It is a subtle signal, hidden inside reflected sunlight, but it carries clues about how efficiently plants are converting light into energy. Photosynthesis is one of the most important processes in the solar system. Green plants, algae, and some bacteria use sunlight to transform water and carbon dioxide into chemical energy, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Every forest, crop field, and wetland is participating in a planetary exchange that links the atmosphere, the climate, and life. The challenge is that a green leaf can look healthy even when it is under stress. Drought may slow its metabolism before the leaf turns brown. Heat waves can damage a plant before the damage becomes obvious in an ordinary image. A satellite that measures fluorescence can provide an earlier warning, because it is observing the machinery of photosynthesis rather than simply observing the plant's outward appearance. FLEX will not work alone. Its measurements are designed to be paired with observations from the Copernicus Sentinel-3 satellites, which monitor land, ocean, and coastal environments. Sentinel-3C is part of a wider European Earth observation system that combines many kinds of instruments, from radar and optical cameras to altimeters that measure the height of the sea surface. That combination matters because no single sensor can tell the whole story. FLEX can reveal how plants are functioning. Sentinel-3 can help show the surrounding conditions, the temperature of the land, the color of the water, the extent of vegetation, and the presence of clouds or aerosols. Together, the spacecraft can connect a biological response with the physical environment that caused it. Imagine a river delta viewed from hundreds of kilometers above Earth. An ordinary image might show a mosaic of green marshes and winding channels. With repeated measurements, scientists could see which areas are actively absorbing light, which are becoming stressed by saltwater intrusion, and which recover after a flood. The result is not just a picture of a wetland. It is a dynamic map of how that wetland is working. Wetlands are especially important because they occupy a small fraction of the land's surface but influence the carbon cycle far beyond their borders. They store carbon in waterlogged soils, support biodiversity, reduce flooding, and filter pollutants. At the same time, they can release methane, a powerful greenhouse gas, when organic matter decomposes without oxygen. The climate role of a wetland is therefore complex. It is not enough to label one landscape as simply a carbon sink or a carbon source. Scientists need to know how water levels, temperature, vegetation, and season interact. Space-based observations can help build that long view across regions that are difficult or dangerous to survey from the ground. This is where modern Earth science becomes a kind of planetary accounting. Satellites repeatedly measure the same places, building records that span seasons and years. Researchers compare those records with weather stations, aircraft surveys, ecological plots, and computer models. Each measurement is a small piece of evidence. Together, they can reveal patterns that would be impossible to see from one location. The launch of Sentinel-3C is also important for continuity. Earth observation missions are not like a single telescope pointed at one object. Their value grows when observations remain consistent over time. A new satellite helps keep the system operating, fills gaps in coverage, and preserves the ability to compare today's planet with the planet observed years ago. Sentinel-3's instruments can monitor the color of the ocean, which helps scientists estimate the concentration of microscopic plant life called phytoplankton. These organisms live near the surface and absorb carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. They are tiny, but they influence marine food webs and play a major role in the global carbon cycle. The spacecraft can also measure sea surface temperature and sea level variation. A few centimeters of changing ocean height may sound insignificant, but across an entire ocean basin, those changes can reflect warming, currents, melting ice, and shifts in the distribution of water. Long-term measurements help separate short-lived weather events from deeper climate trends. On land, the data can support agriculture, wildfire monitoring, drought assessment, and water management. During a growing season, changing vegetation signals can help identify areas where crops are struggling. After a fire, repeated images can track the return of plant life. Along coastlines, water color can reveal sediment movement or algal blooms. The scientific opportunity is not only about collecting more pixels. It is about collecting the right kind of information at the right moment. A sharper image is useful, but a measurement that detects stress before it becomes visible can be even more valuable. In that sense, Flex is giving Earth observation a new dimension, not just what the planet looks like, but how living systems are performing. There is also a philosophical shift here. For centuries, maps described Earth as a surface of places, mountains, rivers, borders, and cities. Orbiting sensors are helping us create maps of processes. They show where carbon is being absorbed, where heat is accumulating, where water is moving, and where ecosystems are changing their behavior. Those maps can improve decisions, but they do not make decisions for us. A satellite can identify a pattern of stress. It cannot by itself determine whether the cause is drought, pollution, invasive species, or a change in land use. That interpretation still requires field science, local knowledge, and careful comparison with independent data. Nor do satellites eliminate uncertainty. Clouds can block optical observations. Instruments have limits. Models can disagree. The most trustworthy conclusions come from combining multiple observations and reporting what the evidence can, and cannot, support. Good Earth science is not a collection of dramatic images. It is a disciplined effort to understand a changing system. Flex and Sentinel-3C represent that effort on a planetary scale. One mission looks closely at the faint signature of photosynthesis. The other contributes to a broad monitoring network that observes the land, ocean, and atmosphere. Their partnership shows how specialized instruments can become more powerful when their data are interpreted together. When the Vega-C rocket rises from Europe's spaceport in French Guiana, the visible event will be a column of fire against the tropical sky. But the deeper story will unfold quietly afterward. A spacecraft will open its solar panels, point its instruments toward Earth, and begin measuring signals that are almost invisible from the ground. Each pass overhead will add another observation to a growing portrait of the planet. A wetland will shimmer in the data. A forest will reveal how it responds to heat. Ocean color will shift with the seasons. Slowly, the planet will become not just a place we inhabit, but a system we can observe in motion. That is the promise of Earth observation from space. It does not make Earth distant. It makes the connections between its parts easier to see. And when we can see those connections, we have a better chance of understanding what is changing, why it is changing, and how to protect the living world beneath the orbiting machines. The next time you look at a satellite image, remember that the most important information may not be the obvious color or shape. It may be a faint signal in a narrow slice of light, a tiny change repeated across thousands of kilometers, or a pattern that only appears after years of watching. From space, science is learning to read the quiet pulse of a planet that is alive. There is a practical reason this matters now. Climate change is not experienced as one global average, it arrives as local extremes. A farmer sees a shortened growing season, a coastal community sees salt moving inland, and a city sees heat lingering overnight. Instruments in orbit provide a common reference, allowing these local experiences to be placed inside a much larger pattern. The data can also improve forecasts. If scientists understand how vegetation responds to heat and water stress, they can improve models of future carbon uptake. If they can distinguish a temporary disturbance from a lasting ecological shift, conservation teams can focus limited resources where recovery is still possible. Better measurements do not solve every problem, but they reduce the darkness around difficult choices. Flex is a reminder that advanced space technology does not have to look toward distant galaxies to answer profound questions. The signal it seeks is coming from leaves, algae, and fields beneath us. By measuring that signal from orbit, humanity is using a machine in space to understand one of the oldest processes on Earth. Sentinel-3C adds another lesson: exploration and stewardship are now connected. The same species that sends rockets across the atmosphere must also observe the atmosphere, the oceans, and the ecosystems that make civilization possible. Looking down from space is no less ambitious than looking out into deep space. It is simply aimed at a world we cannot afford to misunderstand. In the years ahead, missions like these will become part of an observing network that is more continuous, more precise, and more openly shared. Their images may appear as maps on a screen, but behind every map is a chain of engineering, calibration, physics, biology, and patient scientific work. And somewhere below, a leaf will absorb a photon, release a whisper of fluorescence, and turn sunlight into life. A satellite will catch a fraction of that whisper. Across millions of measurements, those faint signals will become a story, not a story of a distant planet, but of our own world, changing in real time.